For today, we're playing AC Mirage with the RTX 3080. And to start it off, we're playing the game at 1080p at the max settings. Alright, going to the settings and graphics. Here we are at the max settings. There we go. In the game, we're sitting in the 120s and down into the 110s occasionally in those heavier scenes. I do think the 3080 will do fantastic in this game. I think even up to 4K, it should get 60 FPS at the max settings. It might have some dips without DLSS, but if we enable DLSS, it can easily get 60 obviously. So we'll see as we go, but so far it's doing great. And the graphics are fantastic. It's not as sharp as 1440p and 4K obviously, but still respectable. Now in the town, we're falling down to the 110s and a bit lower as well occasionally. Not too bad. For the VRAM, we're sitting at 8.7 gigs. This card only has 10, but regardless, it shouldn't be an issue in this section. Alright, flying up into the sky. Fall down into the 100s and the 90s. There we go. So yeah, so far at 1080p, it's doing great, but that's not all. There's going to be a section in the intro of the game that is far more intensive. So let's back out and go there instead and see how this card does. Let's make our way up here. Should get quite a bit more intensive. It's the 110s up to the 130s now, but just you wait. Once we fall down here, so will the FPS. And now we're in the 80s. And even the high 70s occasionally. That is crazy. Oh, don't see me. How does he see me? Shh. What a weird glitch. It happens every single time too. No! So yeah, so far at 1080p. Dodge that. I'm getting distracted. Hold on. Sit down. So yeah, so far at 1080p, the game is running beautifully. And we are sitting at above 60 FPS at all times with a 3080. Which is fantastic. Let's take care of these last two guys. And make our way to 1440p instead. 1440p at the max settings and no DLSS. Let's jump back into it. The 90s and the 100s. That's a decent FPS dip, but still fantastic for this card. And also for this game, it's a story-driven game, so 60 FPS is really the target. So anything above that is a bonus. Alright, going towards the town, we're falling down into the high 70s and 80s. Still doing fine, the game isn't stuttering or lagging at all either. So it's good news for us. And the VRAM is going up quickly, but it's sitting at 8.8 gigs right now. Still doing fine. We have 10 gigs in total, like always. Alright, in the town. FPS won't get affected too much. In fact, it will go up into the 90s and the high 90s. Flying up. Falling into the 80s. And the 70s in a second. There we go. So it's the low 80s and the high 70s in this section. That's fantastic. And the graphics are amazing now. I think with the 3080, you should at least play at 1440p in this game. It's a massive quality jump. Okay, let's back out and go to the intro of the game and see if we can hold 60 FPS there as well. Alright, we're in the 80s now, which means once we go down into the bush, never mind, back up to the 90s again. It's in the 110s and the 120s up here. But going down into the 90s, and here it comes. The 60s. Wow, it's the high 60s. That's a nice surprise, to be honest. I'm impressed. So yeah, there we go. At 1440p, the game is playable at above 60 FPS at all times. What's up, buddy? But at this point, you can go ahead and use DLSS if you want to get extra FPS. Okay, let's back out, enable DLSS, and go again. For DLSS, I'm going with the balance preset. It should look fantastic and play beautifully as well. Alright, going down. It's doing a bit better. We're set into the 90s here, and now we're in the 120s. It's like a 30 FPS increase. Going down to the bush, we're now in the 80s. So around a 20 FPS increase on average. So yeah, I think ideally for this resolution, I would use DLSS at the balance preset. The game looks just as good as native 1440p, and plays much better as well. Just die, man, please. There you go. Let's back out, play the game at 4K max settings, and see how we do there. Alright, 4K max settings, no DLSS. We are barely in the 60s. So the high 50s and the low 60s so far. And the VRAM is sitting at 9.7 gigs as well, so this card is getting maxed out fully. If the game starts stuttering, I'll let you guys know, but so far it's doing great. In the town, we go up to the 70s now, so a decent FPS bump. Alright, flying up into the sky. We are back down into the 60s and the 50s. So yeah, so far at 4K, the FPS is ranging between the mid 50s and the low 60s. Ooh, already down to the low 50s here. That is kind of crazy. Alright, going down. So probably the 40s once we go down there. Yeah, it's the mid 40s. That is pretty crazy. So yeah, at this point, the game isn't... I mean, it's still playable, but it's not ideal for this card. So I think DLSS is a must for 4K. So yeah, let's back out and enable DLSS and go again. Boom! Dude, the pairing system is so nice. Using balanced DLSS, we're now in the 80s and 90s instead of the high 50s and the low 60s. And looking at the graphics, the game looks amazing still. It's very sharp and very crisp. And I can't see any shimmering at all, which is amazing. VRAM's still at 9 gigs unfortunately, but didn't really cause an issue before, so I think we'll be fine. Going into the town. Falling as low as the low 80s. Flying up, we're now in the high 70s and the low 80s. Let's turn back around. Alright, the FPS should fall quite a bit here. And it does into the high 70s. So yeah, not too bad. Back into the intro. In the 110s and the low 100s. Fantastic stuff. So it should fall down into the 70s and 80s once we go down into the ground. Or it could be lower than that actually. Who knows? It could be the 60s. Going down. The 80s already. And it's the mid 60s. So yeah, at this point the game is playable at 60 FPS at all times. And for graphics, it looks amazing. As good as native 4K. So there's no downsides to it. But if you want to get more FPS, we can use performance mode for DLSS. So let's back out and do it again and see how much FPS we gain from balance to performance. Performance DLSS, we're now sitting in the low 70s. So a slight FPS bump, but the graphics still look as good as native 4K. So if you want the extra FPS, you can use it. It's really up to you. It's your choice. Okay, that's AC Mirage with the RTX 3080. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys for watching. And I'll see you guys next time for the next video. See you guys there.